Daniel, number 4. The handwriting on the wall.
Many years passed since Daniel interpreted the king's dreams, and King Nebuchadnezzar was now dead. Another king reigned over Babylon. His name was King Belshazzar. King Belshazzar gave a great feast and invited 1,000 nobles and their many wives. The palace rang with talking and laughter and drinking. Under the influence of much wine, King Belshazzar gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that his predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. He wanted his guests to drink from these sacred temple goblets. The servants obeyed. The goblets were brought, filled with wine, and passed around to the guests. The king and his noblemen and their wives all drank from these goblets. As they drank, they praised their idols of gold, silver, wood, and stone. Belshazzar was very merry as he drank. Suddenly, the king turned pale, and the laughter stuck in his throat. Great fear swept over him, his legs shook, and his knees knocked together. There, on the wall of the palace, he saw the fingers of a man's hand writing strange words. The words were so strange that the king could not read them. At once a terrible silence filled the banquet hall. Everyone was afraid, for no one could read the strange words the hand had written. In a loud voice, the king cried out, "Bring me the wise men!" When the wise men arrived, the king said, "Whoever reads these words and gives me its interpretation will be clothed in purple, have a gold chain around his neck, and have the third highest position in the kingdom." So all the king's wise men came in, but none could read the inscription or figure out what it meant. Then King Belshazzar became even more terrified. Because of all the noise in the banquet hall, the queen came in to see what was wrong. She saw the king sitting and trembling among his frightened guests. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't let your thoughts terrify you or your face be pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the gods in him. Your predecessor, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief over the wise men of Babylon. He has an extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and the ability to interpret dreams and solve riddles. Call for Daniel, and he will give the interpretation." The king was glad to hear of someone who could help. He sent for Daniel right away. Daniel was now an old man. For a long time he had lived in Babylon, but he was hardly noticed by the kings who followed Nebuchadnezzar. When the wise old man was brought into the banquet hall, Belshazzar asked excitedly, "Are you the Daniel who was captured from the land of the Jews? I have heard that the spirit of the holy gods is with you, and that you have understanding and wisdom. My wise men could not tell me what the handwriting means. If you will tell me, you will be clothed in purple, have a gold chain placed around your neck, and be promoted to the third highest position in the kingdom." Daniel was not interested in the king's gifts, but he promised, "I will read the writing and explain its meaning." As Daniel studied the strange writing, God revealed to him its meaning. Daniel reminded Belshazzar that Nebuchadnezzar had been a great king, but because of his sin and pride, God had taken the kingdom away from him, and he had lived like a wild animal for a time. "God is ruler over the kingdom of men, and sets anyone he wants over it," Daniel warned Belshazzar. "But you, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. Instead, you exalted yourself against the Lord of heaven. The goblets from God's house were brought to you, and you drank from them while you praised your idols made of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. You have not glorified the God who holds your life breath in his hand and who controls the whole course of your life. Because you have done these things, God has sent the hand, and this writing was inscribed upon your wall. This is the message that was inscribed. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. This is the interpretation of the message. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and do not measure up. Upharsin, your kingdom has been divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Even though the interpretation of the words on the wall were not good news for King Belshazzar, he honored the promise he had made to Daniel. The king commanded that Daniel be clothed in a purple royal robe. Then they fastened a gold chain around Daniel's neck. In front of all the guests, the king proclaimed Daniel to be the third highest ruler in the kingdom. The words of the prophecy in the handwriting on the wall were fulfilled that very night. The Medes and Persians captured the city of Babylon and killed King Belshazzar. Darius the Mede took over the kingdom in Belshazzar's place that same night. Remember that Daniel had been troubled when he had to give King Nebuchadnezzar bad news. That wasn't the case here. Daniel was quite harsh with King Belshazzar because the king knew what had happened to Nebuchadnezzar, yet he openly mocked God. Daniel said, "The God who holds your breath in his hand and owns all your ways, you have not glorified." There are many things we can learn from this lesson. I've thought of 3. Maybe you can think of more. First, King Belshazzar was foolish enough to lose all self-control at his party due to the alcohol he was drinking. Drunkenness has been referred to as all 3 outs: alcohol out of the bottle, money out of the pocket, and common sense out of the head. While he was drinking, King Belshazzar openly mocked God and paid for his foolishness with his life. The Bible has many warnings against drinking and drunkenness. Second, God can and sometimes does communicate in unexpected and even shocking ways. This incident was so shocking that still today you can hear people use the phrase, "He saw the handwriting on the wall." This phrase is usually intended to portray impending doom. It is certainly another warning to us about the danger of sinful pride. Third, Daniel was promoted to the 3rd man in the kingdom. This was the highest rank that King Belshazzar could offer Daniel. Belshazzar's father was officially first in the kingdom, and he left the management of Babylon to his son, Belshazzar, who was therefore second in the kingdom. Daniel held this important position of 3rd man in the kingdom for only a few hours. Shortly after Daniel was promoted, Belshazzar was killed, and Darius became king of Babylon. This shows us how temporary the awards and rewards of this world are. How much better it is to work for heavenly rewards that never fade away. A good verse to memorize is Colossians 3:23, "And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men."